All right, well, while I'm waiting on the fish to bite, I might as well talk about East vs. West 10. So I'll just talk about the top 3 matches. I think it's a great card for the most part. There's a lot of really even matches. And with sport, you just kind of never know what can happen. That's why betting is effective. If it was a sure thing, or if somebody just was really good at predicting sports or opponents or teams or whatever, they get super rich. And I'm sure some of them do, are pretty good at it. You can lose a ton of money too if you're not careful, because the underdog can always win. There can always be upsets. Who's supposed to win isn't always the one that does. We'll talk about Todzilla versus Angarbayev. It's an interesting matchup because it's very hand control, back pressure based versus just raw horsepower, side pressure. Todd Hutchings, like everybody said already, he looks like his hand is improving, which is good to see. I mean, if that guy could force a hook better and his hand just got stronger, better pronation, particularly better wrist flexion, he would freaking dominate even more than he is. I mean, he's already very dominant, but he wouldn't be losing to some of the guys that he does lose to. And whenever he does lose to somebody, it is usually a pretty high level top roller like Angarbayev. Angarbayev is a ninja. I mean, that guy is incredible. The transitions he makes. And I like to see the fact that he's not like this huge, massive freak science experiment. You know, he looks muscular, particularly when he does flex up or get pumped, but he also just looks like an average human being in a lot of ways. Seems to be very proficient, and I think the key to him beating Todd Hutchings is to get him on enough back pressure to get him on his side of the table. I think if he can keep Todd far enough away from his hand to where he's trying to access that side pressure super far away from his shoulder, it'll be really tough for Todd Hutchings. It does, although, look like Todd has been working on just his back pressure, the ability to just stay tight this way. So it's like, even if he doesn't get fully hooked in, he should have enough side pressure to beat him. So I don't really, if I had to make a prediction, I'd probably say 3-2 Angarbayev. I mean, it could go completely opposite. Again, these are tough matches to call, and Todd has a really good chance. If he negates the hand of Angarbayev's in big trouble, which he can. I've been in situations to where I arm wrestled. The best side pressure I've ever felt was from a non-arm wrestler. There's a football player that he had the record power clean or clean in his college, and he had so much side pressure that it was hard for me to do anything with my hands. I mean, I couldn't climb, couldn't really flex in, supinate, pronation. It was very difficult to move my hand, period. I always got the win, but you know, part of that was just I knew how to apply the pressures better than he did, but I would have loved to have seen that guy get an arm wrestling. But anyways, next match I'd like to talk about, we'll just go in order. So the main event is John versus, who's John going against? Oh yeah, Sasha, right? Sasha Andreev, the hooker. So I mean, that's another real tough one to call. John's cut weight 10 kilograms or more, something like that. But John Brzezinski is the man. He's the one that really got me into arm wrestling. The Pulling John documentary, after I saw that, it just like fired me up and was super inspiring. And he's still, to this day, every match that I see him in, I'm just like, I don't know, I like swell up with pride for the guy in some ways. I mean, and it also just makes me feel like it's possible, or if John can do it. And he is the perfect storm, like genetically. He's like, everybody says height is the end all be all, but you take a really tall guy and you take a really short guy, and like their pressures are like completely different. You know, he's like kind of in the middle in some ways, like 6 foot, 6'2", I don't know exactly, but he's got like a stocky frame, but he's also kind of tall. He broke his arm when he was 13. His dad had him arm wrestling when he was young, and he's 59 years old and still kicking ass. And somebody that's coming up on 40, that's really good for me to see. And one of the reasons I just love the guy, he's not great at like hyping matches, but his matches are incredibly exciting to watch. I would say John is probably the most complete arm wrestler. His hand is strong, supinated, pronated, his wrist flexion, it was probably his most weak point, but it's good. He's got good side pressure, back pressure. I mean, I've never felt the guy, but that's what it looks like to me. Sasha Andreev, though, there's something about a shorter hand and a shorter arm. If you put pressure way up into my fingers, I'm gonna feel a lot of pressure in my wrist. I'm not easy to open my hand because I do have a big hand. I get around your hand, and it's just a strong hand. If you give me a lot of pressure, I'll feel it in the elbow. If the origin of the pressure is way up here, you're gonna feel more pressure down here. Now, if you're a shorter arm and a shorter hand, your ability to stay tight, to keep, once you get curled in, it's super hard to get a shorter person's hand open. If a shorter arm can get tight to their body, they're super hard to get away from their body. So, about to lose my my granola. So Sasha Andreev does have that tight, compact frame, and he looks beastly. I mean, he's got a real strong looking arm, strong looking frame in general. If Andreev can get him in that hook, it's gonna be a tough day for John. It's gonna be a tough day for John anyway. I mean, the man's 59 years old and still trying to compete with these young cats and just doing really well still. So John, just fight to the end, you know, keep inspiring me, keep kicking ass, doing your thing. We all love to see it. You're a role model, really, you know, you're respectful. He's not the greatest at hyping matches. He's kind of like a quiet, underspoken guy. He's not here to intimidate people. He has nothing to prove, but he crushes people on the table. Been doing his whole life. Great matchup. I'd love to see John win. I don't know. That's another tough one to call. I would say maybe 3-2 John Brzenk. I'm gonna go John on that one. The times that I've predicted him to lose, he ends up pulling it out. So I think there's a good chance that he's going to end up winning again and just shocking the world. And he'll be the 95 kilogram champion. And let's get to the main event. We got Devon versus Denis Simplikov. That's an interesting match. Kind of. I honestly would have liked to have seen Denis give it like another year, or at least 6 months. He was super keen to get back to the table and competing. You want to prove the doubters wrong. You want to prove the haters wrong and stuff. And I get that to an extent, but you also got to be patient. He's been looking great, but I would have liked to have maybe seen him against, you know, he beat John, which is great. You know, I think he just kind of took John out of his power a little bit, but he was quite a bit bigger than John, even at the time. I would have liked to have seen him against more lower level super heavyweights before he goes against Devon. So I think that was a mistake on his part, is just coming back too early. You know, he might pay. Apparently they were kind of pressuring Devon to take a match. And a lot of it is probably Denis's team, you know, Babkin and the guys around him want him to prove himself and want him to get back into it. And it's partially for their gain. You know, if their main guy, their main popular arm wrestler isn't arm wrestling, you know, where are they at? I also don't think Denis is the greatest arm wrestler. You know, I hear a lot of people, oh, he's actually a really good top roller. Like, no, he's not. He's just freakishly strong. Crazy strong hand. His fingers are ridiculously thick. His thumb is huge. You know, he turns that thumb over and he's got you cracked already. But I'm not super impressed with him. If you watch him, he kind of like digs this arm onto the table. He ends up in this kind of open, low-handed top roll. He finally, you know, gets his arm off the table and he starts to try to pin, and he has a tough time pinning. He's finally kind of learned to get, you know, a second surge in. I've seen him press like in his prime, but that's when he was more like on top of the table and not finishing a guy, or maybe, you know, having him here and able to still get on him with that press. From what I see, he gets so far away from his hand and kind of low that it'd be hard to jump back into that press. So I don't think that press is going to be an option for him, honestly. It would be very surprising to me if he actually can get into that press, which means he's going to be in a king's move trying to beat another king's mover that can press. Which brings me to Devon. You know, Devon is just a more versatile, longer levered arm wrestler that's in his prime right now as far as just like strength and all the stuff he's got on. You know, he says to Denis, oh, don't die. Denis says, don't die, Devon. You know, you you might OD also, you know. And when you hear overdose, you don't think, you know, you think of somebody just like one time pop, you know, that kills them or whatever. But it's like more like the overdose of like the alcoholic or something that just continues to abuse their liver and their kidneys. And then, you know, they give it that extra push before a match. And, you know, it's like Devon, you know, you almost got a blood clot from, and I get it, the pressure change in an airplane could do weird things to your body. You know, I've been on an airplane and it like crushed my water bottle. You know, it was insane. The type of pressure that it puts on your body at that elevation. And it might be something else. Again, you can get sick from constantly putting drugs in your body. And I mean, he looks like he's having a tough time breathing and with indigestion, and he's probably got heartburn. And it's just unfortunate to see in a lot of ways. It just doesn't look healthy. But anyways, aside from all of that, the guy looks strong, seems fairly well prepared. I'm not super impressed with the the Canadians, their team and stuff. You know, he apparently thinks they're really good. Yeah, not super impressive to me. So not compared to like Dennis's training partners. So I will give that to Dennis. His training partners are a lot better, in my opinion, a lot stronger. They work out together, things like that. So I do think they're going to end up in a King's move. And I do think Devon will be able to get into a press. I don't think Devon can really hook. Not the way I hook or the way I view hooking. He's more of a like, he gets on you with his body. Just because your wrist is curled in does not mean you're hooking. Hooking is a back and down movement. If you're fully on top of your tricep and you're not like pulling to yourself, you're just giving down pressure like he does, you're pressing. So just stop it, Devon. You're not hooking, you know, maybe with your left, I think I've seen it, or maybe back in the day you had a better hook. But from what I've seen lately, he's not much of a hooker. And even if he did go into a hook with Dennis, Dennis probably would just have too much power to be able to pull him out of it. I think what he's gonna have to do is go into a King's move, work it to his side of the table, and not get so low and so opened up to where if he tries to hop up, he's gonna get separated. He's gotta stay, and they're not letting him get too crazy like the Chafee and Lorette match, but he can't get too low under the table. So he needs to get on top of it and press. So in my opinion, it'll be 3-1 Devon. It looks like my camera's actually about to die or reset. So appreciate you.